Right, welcome back, people, to another episode of the EdTech Talks. Today we're kind of focusing on student well-being with some of us now finishing education, not going back to college or school for the first time in our lives, and kind of navigating that time and how stressful and different it can be. So in true EdTech Talk fashion, we've brought in the best person for the job, as we always do. So beside me here is a man with a lot of letters after his name, and a very long email send off, does a lot of things. This is James Callaghan. He's a therapist, author, director of Minds in Schools. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So on all those letters and important things, run us through what it is you do from day to day.
Yeah, thanks. So it's good to be back in university. I've spent many, many years in several universities, so it's nice to be back and to talk about mental health, because I think from being through different universities and from understanding anxieties, it gives us a different perspective on how things have been. So my background is mental health nursing, and I started that in Donegal, and it lasted 4 years in university there. I moved to Dublin, and I did some of my mental health nursing in inpatients and day hospitals, where I got to understand more about clients and different complexities of mental health. I like teaching, so I went to University of Ulster, and I spent time doing some education there and teaching and training for nurses. And then I was lucky whenever I was in working in Dublin that I met a CBT therapist. And she told me all about psychotherapy and CBT, so I became more curious about this as a really important tool to help people overcome their anxieties. So I was like, okay, CBT, let's see what that's all about. So then I went to Queen's to study that, and then I went to Oxford after that just to kind of understand more about how we can train and supervise more people. And once I understood all about, I suppose, all the most that I could about mental health, I became curious about how we can help children and adolescents, because it involves more family work, and there's more and more children that were kind of coming into the mental health services. So I thought I'd specialise in that area, and I left the HSE, and now I spend a lot of my time working with different individuals who have different mental health presentations from the ages of 7 up to about 70. So I get to see lots of different people with lots of different presentations, and I see a lot of people who are in universities in different years. And I think if you think about it, whenever you start university in first year, it brings up a lot of different challenges between trying to live by yourself or live with different people, trying to understand and navigate around colleges, trying to make it in time for lectures, trying to sit through lectures, trying to understand assignments. So I think as you look to the different years of students in universities, I think different years can also bring up different complications. So a lot of people who present to me may present in different years. For example, it could be year one, it could be placement, it could be the end of the year, it could be the second year slump, whenever people kind of, the adrenaline's kicked in and it's gone, and now you're left in this place where you're trying to find your feet and ask questions. Is this the course I should be doing? Is this the course I should be doing? So I think from that, maybe today I could speak about some of the clients that I've seen and some of the mental health presentations that have helped out, and that's why I'm really excited to be here, is to share these stories and to see what I can do to, even if there's someone listening today who's listened to it, they might relate to some of the things we're talking about, and it may be an avenue where they can either seek help here in DCU or think a bit more about their anxieties, or take it further if that needs to happen.
Yeah, so I think I definitely fell victim to that second year slump too. But you mentioned CBT there. For the people that might not know what that entails, can you give us a bit about what it means?
CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, is a really good kind of structured way of trying to help people understand themselves, I suppose, and it looks at the patterns of what people think, how people feel after they think about certain things, and what they do. So, for example, so we'll just go back to what CBT is all about. Really, it's about trying to understand someone's problems using the idea of thinking, feeling, and doing, and From understanding that, then you're able to teach people how to think differently and how to act differently afterwards. So an example would be, if you think about people who have social anxiety, or people who think that people may be thinking bad about them, whenever they go into a crowd or into a lecture theatre or into a new campus, they might feel a little bit anxious, and they might think, oh my God, people's looking at me, or no one's going to speak to me. And if someone carries that in their mind, then what they're going to do is they may be quieter, they may kind of not go into lectures, they may skip lectures. And CBT helps people to kind of identify the feeling, identify the thought, and then maybe we can look more closely at that thought and see, well, is it real? Is it not real? Is there different ways of looking at it? How can you build confidence to be able to challenge some of these thoughts and get back into the lecture theatre? And some of the clients who have worked with it, it's about kind of starting slow. And I think whenever you go into first year, it can be quite overwhelming, and therefore taking a step by step can be really, really useful. And if someone finds it overwhelming to get into a lecture theatre, maybe it's about trying to find a friend or someone who you can connect with, and then they can be used as, I suppose, as a connection point, and maybe get people into bigger areas and stay connected. So that'd be one example of kind of people who are a little bit socially anxious. And there's lots of others, anxieties, which CBT helps us to understand, because the word anxiety is quite global. But actually, if you think about it, different anxieties have got different stories. So you have the person who has social anxiety, who worries about people. You have the person who has, for example, OCD, who has a different kind of a worry. It's more about responsibility of harm coming to themselves or others if they don't do certain rituals. And these people can present, again, with other complexities once they go into an environment which is more stressful. So maybe they're spending more time in the bathroom, or washing their hands, or rechecking assignments. It's still an anxiety, but it's a very different anxiety. And once people come and speak to psychotherapists, or they seek help and they have the anxiety problem, what CBT does is helps people to understand what their problem is, how they can challenge it, and what they can do to overcome it, so they have more positive experiences and positive memories of being able to cope with the challenge that they have.
I see. So I suppose one thing to note there is that just because a student may be absent at times or miss a few lectures, it's not always because they're a bad student or that they're not academically inclined. There is other factors at play there that inhibit them.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and especially for students going back to school now, and for children of the younger years who are also going back to school, and even younger from primary school, is if a child isn't going back to school, it's more about trying to understand what's going on in the child's world that's stopping them from going back to school, rather than the child not wanting to go back to school. Similar to students, everyone wants to get better, everyone wants to progress, is trying to figure out what the person is going through. I think storytelling is really useful, because storytelling is trying to understand the person's story. Everyone's got a story. And what happens in that person's life whenever they enter in different environments, and if they have an anxiety, that story can shape the way that they see things.
So I suppose you mentioned that social anxiety and then OCD. Would they be among kind of the more common reasons that people come to see you, or?
Yeah, so social anxiety will be a big one. Some people, for example, who maybe have ADHD or ASD would also come. And again, whenever you think about the presentation, it makes sense how it can be so complicated going into first year in college. Because people sometimes who have ASD, they might like structure, they might like format, they might like familiarity, and then whenever they go into a new environment, that's kind of taken away, and that's a bit scrambled, and that can lead people to feel quite anxious. So then it's about trying to help them to build a safe place within the university where they're able to start off, feel safe, and then learn. Because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to learn. Yeah. It's going to impact the way that you're able to process information. People with ADHD may have a background of trying to concentrate, and then they're put into an environment where it's even more complicated with larger rooms and more assignments. And then it'll be about trying to see with these people, okay, so, is it manageable, or do we need to seek other help by going to GPs or by getting assessments? So it kind of be, I think, social anxiety, people, for example, who have ADHD or ASD, OCD, and I think they're probably, people with panic attacks. That'll also be another common one that would happen because of the change in environment. A lot of more pressure, trying to fit in more, feeling the kind of idea of being trapped, and then trying to help people to understand the problem and then work through it.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that. I suppose when you're dealing with these different anxieties, that is probably a natural kind of step up then, that panic attacks may occur, and that it's obviously when you're 19, 20, 21, realistically you should have been getting the help for that maybe earlier on. So how does that look in terms of catching these issues before they come to the head?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of people, if you think about panic attack is when someone feels really, really scared or fear. Okay, and when someone feels that, they often feel trapped. When people feel trapped, they think that they can't get out of situations. And then what happens is the body responds in a way that it thinks that there actually is danger. So what happens is the heart goes fast, the person can't think straight, they can't catch a breath. And often people who have panic symptoms think, oh my God, I'm going to collapse, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to be really anxious, people are going to look at me and see how anxious that I am. And then what happens is they start to avoid it, they start to lose confidence, and they start to think to themselves, oh my God, what's wrong with me here? But often whenever people have panic attacks and they come in to see me, it's not the first time it's happened. They'll say, oh yeah, I kind of had a few other episodes and maybe I kind of got by, but now it's got worse. So what do we do here? So panic attacks are really treatable. I think it's something that I love to work with, because once people understand the physiology of anxiety, they understand what the body is doing, they're able to talk differently to themselves. They're able to come up with different ways of speaking about their anxieties, that they're actually fine. It's just the body's doing a really good job. It's acting in a way that there's danger, but there is no danger. And then helping them, that's really, really useful. Panic attacks has come so much to me that I've written my first book on panic attacks for children. And it goes through the same format that students would come to me with, which is trying to help them understand what panic attacks are about, give them different ways of thinking about their anxiety, and giving them step-by-step ways of trying to overcome anxiety in a very, very gradual phase. You don't want to just go straight into a lecture theatre, straight away. You want to kind of build it up slowly so you understand that anxiety does come, anxiety does go. It just takes time, and it takes more awareness about what's going on.
I see. And then I suppose in terms of that book, would you be hoping that doesn't just reach children, but also maybe to older brothers and sisters, adults, teachers, so that everyone can then understand and be able to identify anxiety and panic attacks in other people, so that we can all help each other grow?
Yeah, I think so. In the book, there's a children's part, and there's a parents part afterwards. So maybe whenever the parents are reading through the narrative, they'll be like, oh, this sounds a bit familiar. So maybe they'll learn through that. The reason that the book is written is because there's a certain age group, I think between 7 and 12, when children don't understand what panic attacks are all about. And by having it there in a narrative form, they're able to learn from it. I think there's lots of really good stuff out there for adults already. But I think if adults read the book, they'll take something from it, hopefully. But especially for the younger people, I think it's really useful. But another reason why I wrote it is because it's so prevalent. It happens so frequently, and I think once you understand it, it makes so much sense, and then people are able to learn and move on. So it doesn't have to be this bad thing. It's just that people understand the story. Going back to storytelling, they understand the story.
Yeah, I think that's interesting to have looked at it in that age group. Obviously, you may have seen that yourself, but for me, I would have never even have heard that before the age of 12. And even up to, I suppose, a young man, you wouldn't know what it is, or even if you've heard the term, you might not know it. And I'd say there's a lot of people out there that have had one, and they might not even know what it was that happened to them. They thought, oh, I just went a bit weird that day. So
exactly. And sometimes looking at at what people do whenever they feel it. So, for example, they might feel like I'm going to pass out, or I'm going to have a heart attack. So, a lot of panic symptoms is based on catastrophic misinterpretation of body sensations. It's a definition, but going back to the worst case scenario. But if you kind of link it more towards biology and understanding, well, then you're able to carve out a different pathway as to what is going on, and therefore people are able to adapt better, and they're not left this idea that my body let me down, more than in the idea like, okay, my body's working really well. I just need to understand my thoughts a bit differently, and if I work a little bit harder and do it slowly, I'll gain confidence, and then people have got more of a positive memory of what's happened. But I think it's a really good point that you made, that a lot of people don't know what it is. They say they have anxiety, and this is what CBT is really useful, and other therapies, is you're able to fine-tune exactly what the person is talking about, so that you can share your story of what you've seen. They're able to understand if that makes sense or doesn't make sense, and then you're able to come up with a plan collaboratively about what you're going to do afterwards.
Okay, so yeah, I suppose my question to that would be, is overcoming them just a mental thing, or is there physical parts too, I suppose, in the moment of overcoming one?
Yeah, really good question. So it's both. It's both. So it's about knowing the symptoms, being able to even write down your thoughts and then write down a different way of looking at it, becoming more familiar with option B, which is based on kind of physiology and other explanations for it, and then slowly being able to build yourself back up to being into bigger environments, where that could be going into a little kind of a cafe, building up to cafeteria, into different areas of college life. And I mean, I think also if you think about technology, it's also helped, I think, in people being able to, there's some research coming out about the new kind of watches and things that people are using, that they're able to understand their stress levels. I don't know that much about it, but I know that the research evidence is saying that there is stuff coming out, and maybe that can be used for people to understand, okay, so I was stressed in this situation, I wasn't stressed in this situation. What was the difference? What was I thinking differently? What was going on differently? So maybe they can use this as a map on to see what else they can do with it. Also in technology, a lot of people wouldn't be seeing me if technology wasn't there. So a lot of my clients come in through either they find me on Google, or we have Zoom chats. They could be in campus, or they come to see me. So technology has really helped me to be able to help people who have mental health problems so much easier. So it's fantastic.
I think that's a good way of looking at technology, because people often would point to technology as the problem, that causes a lot of mental health issues. But the fact that you're welcoming it and, seeing people use it to help themselves, obviously we know there's a big demand on the mental health sector in Ireland. So maybe we should lean into that a bit more, so people can kind of take control of their mental health. Yeah,
totally. I think you're right. I think maybe we can look at the advantages, and then we can look at the disadvantages. And disadvantages will be, we know there's too much scrolling, too much screen time can be linked to more anxieties. But we also know that if we reduce the amount of screen time, maybe by about 2 hours or so, it can increase. It can turn back the clock a little bit on this. I think it's about working with what you have, and then knowing that if you're engaging too much with it, then what's the effects of that, and having more kind of control over that. And also, if you look into sleeping, a lot of us aren't sleeping very well because we're using our phones, and we know that sleep is really important for people to be able to memorize, and memory consolidation. So being able to learn stuff. We know that if people are doing all-nighters, we know that they're less likely to be able to remember data. We know that if people are taking kind of naps, that's actually been linked to people having better memories and be able to learn stuff. So I think sleeping is also an important part of the whole technology thing as well. So I think it's about using what we have and trying to see if it works with us, and just being cautious on what's out there.
So I suppose going back to college life, then you're mentioning different stressors and stuff like that. Where do you see the biggest challenges that people need to be aware of when they're going through the university experience, and why are they challenges?
Yeah, I think first year can be quite challenging for students, just because it's something very, very new. And I think a lot of people may be feeling anxious about this. And I think it's important to normalize that, starting something new will bring up a lot of anxieties and challenges. And often these feelings can be helpful, because they are going to make us do things that maybe push us outside our comfort zones. But I think if people are losing sleep for a lot of nights, and they're not able to focus on assignments, and they find that things are becoming a little bit more difficult, then's the time to kind of contact, either speak to a family member, speak to a friend, or else even contact the services here in DCU and get some help. So I think a lot of people are quite self-aware, and they know when things aren't going their way. And that's when they usually kind of reach out and contact someone. But I think first year can be tricky, and then second year people tend to kind of question, maybe is this the right course, or what's going on here. I think connecting also with activities here and being part of some social clubs can be really useful, and anchor people, help them to belong more, and help them to share any of their kind of troubles that's going on in their lives.
Yeah, so in terms of for the here and now, what are some tips you would give students going in to be able to navigate this journey successfully?
Great question. I think, firstly, being kind to yourself, knowing that this is going to be a new challenge. Everyone's going to be feeling a little bit anxious going into college, normalizing it. I think connecting as quick as you can be really useful, building up connections. I think journaling can be really useful, writing down some of your goals, how you're getting on. If there's any kind of distressing worries, you could write that down and problem solve any worries that you have. Talking to your friends, talking to your family. I think taking things slow as well and trusting the process to see how you're getting on with things. Giving yourself praise for little achievements. So, for example, have overcome the first semester. That can be a big achievement. Getting your assignments in. But I think also if there is any struggles, linking back in with your lecturers, and letting them know anything that you're struggling with can be really useful as well. I know there's lots of really useful supports out there on campus for people. So I think it's about kind of just asking and trusting the process.
I think that's interesting what you say about praising yourself, because I think that's something a lot of people don't do enough in terms of, okay, you got that in on time and you've got a decent grade for it. Some people are too quick to push themselves down, no matter how well they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's a really good point, because a lot of people might say, okay, if I passed that, but what about the next one?
Yeah.
And whenever you're seeing some for therapy, you might say, yeah, but how often do you get these thoughts about not failing? People might say, a lot. Well, how often have you failed? I never failed. Oh, so what does that say? That means I'm someone who's a little bit anxious about failing. And getting to be more aware of the thoughts that comes in about I could fail. But it's more important to look at, I've put in a lot of work, I've passed this, so therefore maybe it's just that I worry too much about failing. So I think storytelling and changing the ways you see things can help people to feel more settled, more in control, and have more of a positive experience about the university life.
So on failure, so this is something that I've asked guests in the past, kind of how they deal with failure. We had a module about it in our course.
Yeah.
So we're kind of interested in how that looks for different people,
yeah.
and how it might change. I suppose for you personally, how would you deal with it? And then how do you kind of talk to different patients? I know it'll be different case on case, but is there a general theme about how to look at it and how to overcome?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Failing, I think, while you were speaking about it, I was trying to kind of figure out what was the words behind it. But failure can be seen as my first attempt in learning.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't got the correct entirely, but I think that's what I saw recently, and I like that because people have to try, and people are going to fail at some stage, and failure can be kind of according to marks, or can be failure as in person not getting what they want. Yeah. But either way, it's important for people to know that it's an important part of learning, and to use that as an example about how they can go, how they can use this to redeem themselves better. I think I've heard some companies have got these kind of places where people experiment and fail, and it's part of the journey. And they'll there's some places set up where within organizations where people have to fail so that they're able to bring about new innovations. So I think the way I'd phrase it is that failure isn't a bad thing, but it's a really good experience for growing and for learning. And everyone at some stage isn't going to get what they anticipated they get. But it's about knowing that if they try, just keep on going, that they will get there in the end.
Yeah, I like how you framed that there. I definitely agree with in terms of it's necessary.
Yeah.
You're never going to just waltz through life and win again. And that's important to be able to understand failure and learn from it, I suppose. So you mentioned technology earlier. A trend that you may have seen over the last while is people using different AI, large language models like ChatGPT, as a therapist or as a way to vent. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you see risks associated to that, or is it a good or a bad thing?
I've recently seen it, and I think some clients are using ChatGPT as kind of how do I say it, as a best friend sometimes, and ask the questions. And the problem is that ChatGPT doesn't have all the answers, and some of the answers that come out aren't. It's hard to understand the data that's been sent back. So in certain conditions, I'm starting to see it more of. So someone, for example, who has OCD, and someone who likes reassurance. And the problem is that reassurance can maintain the anxiety, because you're kind of putting all of your problems onto someone else, and someone else comes back and gives you kind of reassurance. You feel good straight away. But the problem is it can be easily used, and it can be something that's used a lot more. So suddenly ChatGPT is used as it becomes more of an enabling thing rather than someone being able to understand the thinking pattern a bit more.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I've seen it more recently in people who have OCD,
Yeah.
but maybe other worries where people are putting it into ChatGPT. It's giving you back the answers, but really what it's doing is it's taking away the anxieties. And I think what we should be teaching people more is about that they have their own inbuilt way of looking at their anxieties and challenging it, and that they don't have to use ChatGPT. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic for lots of different things, but I think using it in this way, I can see some problems with that.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there. That it makes a bit of sense to have someone to talk to when there's not anything around. But would you suggest maybe journaling more so, or being able to speak with yourself and thrash out things? Because realistically, the chatbot is going to tell you what you're kind of guiding it to anyway.
Exactly. I think connecting, being in groups, I think talking to people. I mean, I think sitting down and having a coffee and talking about what's on your mind, and connection is really, really therapeutic.
Yeah.
I think if someone is worried about something, it's about writing down what the worry is and trying to see, okay, is this something that I can deal with now? So is it like a type A worry, as in I can actually put my hands around it and do something about it? So if someone has a broken leg, that's something they can do something about. They can get it, they can get medication, they can give it rest, whatever. But worrying about getting a broken leg isn't going to do anything because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So therefore you're in B land, which is hypothetical land. So, structuring your worries is it something you do now or do later, can help people to understand, okay, where am I putting my energies into? And what can I actually do about it? And some people, I teach them these simple skills, can help people to have more ownership over their anxieties and worries and say, okay, yeah, now I was worried about this, but now I understand it's too far in the future. I can't really do much about it. Some people write down and maybe review it after a while, but some people are able to kind of put it into different boxes. So that'll be one example, for example, of how to overcome worries.
Yeah, so I suppose would that be kind of geared towards OCD, kind of people, rather than passing on the worry to someone else, to more so take ownership of it and hit it head on, or is it a slower process?
Yeah, it'd be for people who kind of have a lot of what if thinking, and that could be kind of more general worry. Okay, so anxiety, like I said, it can be quite. Anxiety, whenever you listen to anxieties, they've all got different stories. And a lot of the kind of what if stories could be the people who worry about lots of different general anxieties. And they're the people who could use the kind of theory, the A or B kind of worries, try and maybe write down some worries, try and reframe some worries. So that's the sort of stuff that would work for that kind of cohort. People of OCD, it would be more of a different kind of intensive thing, whereas more understanding their thoughts that they have, and exposure response prevention would be the way forward if you're looking at CBT for people who have OCD. And look, maybe people have a bit of OCD in university anyway, but maybe it might spike, and maybe that's when they might kind of seek a bit more help just to get over those spikes.
Would it be kind of that the new environment and less control over?
Yeah,
stuff
exactly,
like that? Yeah.
exactly. I think stress can bring up OCD a little bit more, and maybe being away from family and lots of different things can make it a little bit. So often, whenever you hear people who have OCD, it's not the first time it's happened. In a lot of cases, they've had it before. They've gotten through it, but maybe it's just a little bit more fine-tuning of being able to think a little bit differently, understand what's going on, and act a little bit differently, and also by being okay with anxiety, that it comes and it goes. And I think that's what a lot of anxiety kind of is about, is that it comes and it goes. It's in most cases quite normal, but if it lingers too long and it's stopping people from doing what they really need to do, then it's about kind of getting a bit more help with that.
Yeah, I think that's one that we probably don't look at enough. Like, obviously we spoke about people don't understand what a panic attack might actually look like. I think most people have the wrong thought of what OCD is. It's not just, washing your hands a couple of times in the sink or something. Like, it is a more serious issue and harder to deal with, I suppose.
Yeah. OCD, I mean, if we're talking about OCD is about kind of a fear of something bad happening to yourself or someone else, and people often think that they're responsible for it happening, and it presents in lots of different ways with lots of different cohorts. People feel really guilty because they have the exact same data as a lot of us have in our heads, but they feel really guilty for some of the stuff that comes into the heads, and they don't want it, and then they might do excessive hand washing or checking or phone calls or driving around the block certain times because they want to feel calm. And by understanding stories, and even the younger years of 7 and 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds, they describe the symptoms but in very different ways. So for example, some clients may be on a scooter, get off the scooter, tidy away the leaves, get back onto a scooter again, and for a lot of parents that might be unusual. But once you understand the story, and the story of the child is, well, if I don't clean up the leaves, someone could fall, and it'd be my fault because I spoiled the leaves. So therefore, I have to get out of the way. I'm helping everybody. But these things then can get worse and worse and worse. And they're so subtle that you can't really see it. But once you understand what the person's going through and the story behind it, then it's easier to change it, because then you can pinpoint exactly what the problem is and teach them how to manage that.
And is the hope then, similar to Leo Rohr's, is to catch it early, so you can prevent it becoming something bigger?
Exactly. I think understanding what's going on early, making sense of it, and then being able to kind of manage the way that you look at things differently and act differently. I think early intervention, is key. Yeah, I think so. And I think, I think a lot more parents are becoming more aware of these things, and they're bringing their children in to see me, even before school starts, because they anticipate that there could be more kind of anxieties in school or not going to school. So I think it's been caught early, and I think parents are doing a really good job of catching it and monitoring it, and getting children the help they need. And they're also the launches, whenever children are getting help, the parents are also in sessions, so they're learning all about these things that we're talking about here, about OCD and about anxieties. So they're then able to move on and to teach the children more about it. Or else they might say, "Oh, I have that as well." And again, they're getting help as well while they're in me, because they're learning more and more about the models.
So I know you're obviously the director of minds in schools, and as well, so that must play a part in how you communicate these things.
Exactly. So Minds in Schools, it's open for the project has been about a year now, and what I found was a lot of younger people were coming to me with the exact same things, which is school anxieties, OCD, social anxieties, all the kind of stuff we've spoken about. And my idea was, okay, how can I get mental health education into schools in the fastest way possible? And so then I thought about, okay, so I have online teaching for parents, where I teach parents about all the things we've spoken about, OCD, social anxiety, so they understand what's going on. They can share some stories, and then they're able to leave with skills they can use to help their children. That's one part. The second part is the books for the younger children, and then the third part is helping teachers to understand anxiety a little bit better. Now I know teachers are so busy, and they're doing such good work in helping people to get into school, but it's just helping them to understand anxieties a little bit better. I think if anxieties and mental health is explained simply, I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do, really, is to make everything simple so it doesn't seem like that big of a deal.
And how much of an impact can the teacher make then in that situation?
I think teachers are doing such a good job, and I know they're so busy, but I don't know, I mean, a lot of them would spend a lot of time, with the children in the halls, or they spend a lot of time out in cars getting them in. So I think teachers are really understanding more and more about mental health and about anxieties, and I think we've come a long way. We can obviously improve, but I think there's a lot of good education out there for teachers already. Even about ADHD and autism and stuff. So I think things are positive, and we can always improve. I think everyone's doing their best. I
suppose the pillars are there in terms of there's a base of knowledge about mental health. There's teachers are usually very understanding and helpful. So maybe that extra bit of knowledge about the more unseen problems, maybe what helps kind of bring a full circle.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, look, maybe, but I don't know. My teachers are very busy. Maybe if they spot someone who's in the toilet a lot, then they'll probably have a conversation with the parent, with the child, to see, are they okay? What's going on? If they notice that a child, feels very kind of stuck or frozen, maybe they can keep an eye on that. But again, it's hard because there's so much going on, but maybe there's something that we can work towards, is trying to spot something and just ask the questions. If they notice someone whose family member has passed away, maybe their concentration isn't going to be that good for a while, and then if it hasn't improved or if the person isn't themselves, it's about having a conversation to see, is the student, is a child okay, and if not, what can we do about it to help them to learn more and to feel better in their school experience.
Yeah, and moving back to, say, students in university, you mentioned technology earlier in terms of watches and things like that. Is there any other bits of technology or services that you would suggest for students?
Yeah, I think there's lots of really good access to online, like, psychotherapy, so Zoom calls are there now. I think there's really good courses that people can access as well online. And what else? Yeah, I think I'd stick towards the research stuff, So I think over the last few years, it's become a lot easier to access stuff. So, if someone's struggling with ADHD, there's lots of really good conferences that maybe they could tap into, and by different professionals across the world. Maybe that wasn't there years ago. I think, COVID came and went, and it brought up a lot of complications, a lot of anxieties. But I think maybe a lot of people went on to technology, and I think access to technology and to expertise in lots of different countries, maybe it's more accessible now.
Yeah, so obviously you do a lot of different things, but your day job is a psychotherapist. So what's your favorite thing about what you do? What makes you love going into work every day?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Recently, my best experience has been whenever a parent and a child came in, and the child had OCD, and the child found it hard to explain to me what was going on in her head, and I was able to give her, I was trying to give her a menu of things, because often from seeing people, you kind of have a fair idea of what they're talking about, and it's nice to see a child, relate to what you're saying and say, yeah, I get that, yeah, that happens to me, and then they start to open up more, and then the parent feels more heard, and then you get a nice call from the parent saying that was really good. That was a really good session, because now we understand what's going on, and now the two of us are able to work together, and she feels less anxious because I feel less anxious, and we're able to have a better conversation and know. So I think whenever you see the relief in the child's face or the parent's eyes, I think it's really, really good. And also getting people back to school. So I've had clients who've been out of school for a year, and then getting them to go back into school. Maybe they've had a trauma, and going from not in school to eventually being in school uniform, having a timetable and getting back into school. That's really good, and then you know that you've done something, you've helped someone get back into school. So that's why the Minds in Schools project is there, really, is I think helping people to get back into school and to stay in school is something that I really enjoy.
I suppose that would be what you would say to someone that would be looking to go into, say, mental health nursing or psychology, is that you really get to see the difference that you make on not a daily basis, but that might be even more rewarding, I suppose, seeing the hard work over weeks and months.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's one of the buzzes that you get out of it, is seeing people coming in who don't know what's going on, to understanding a story, to be able to tell themselves a different story, and then to be able to move on and live a different life. That's what's really good. And then you start to see. You start to learn from clients as well. So clients teach me so much about their experiences, which is the book as well. And then I'm able to share what they have told me back. So like lots of people have educated me about ADHD, about medication. They have told me, James, this is what works for me. This is what doesn't work. This is what's happened to me whenever I took this medication, whatever. And then from that, I'm able to understand other clients who may be starting the same journey, because you've heard similar stories, but you're able to give back lots of different information. So I think clients, like every time I'm in the office, I am getting more and more education from clients, because they're teaching me more about their lives and about their experiences, and then I'm able to absorb that and then kind of internalize it, and then maybe feed it back in different ways. So that's kind of it. Every time at the office, I kind of am back in college again, because I'm learning more and more about different things. Yeah. And I often ask people about their experience with ADHD, their experience with medication, their experience of panic attacks, because it just fills up my knowledge about the condition, and it helps me to ask different questions and better questions.
I suppose to finish off there, where do you see the this industry and these kind of issues going in the next 10, 20 years? How do you see it progressing? Do we get more control over it? Are we going to get better with it, or what way do you see it going?
I would hope that with all of the information that's all the positive information about anxieties and about different mental health problems, and about hopefully new budgets and lots of different things, I'm hoping things are going to improve. I think early intervention is really really useful, and I think everyone's trying their best to help people. So I'd be very positive about the whole thing, and I think that if you look at the work in universities and in schools, everyone's trying to do their best. But all we can do, I think, is if there's a problem, speak about it and get help. And there's lots of people who are here to help you.
Yeah, I suppose so. The message there is to take time and to be kind to yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint, I suppose. Absolutely. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, listen, thanks for coming on.
I think having me on.
It's been very interesting to listen to you speak, and for me to learn about these different things. I wouldn't have been too in tune with all these different issues, and that may be part of the problem in Ireland, is that some of us are a bit, maybe not ignorant, but unaware of what's gone on. So I think it's been really interesting, and a lot of people will definitely benefit from what we spoke about here today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on. Cheers.